We are speaking about social impact, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability with Sridhar Vembu. He is the CEO of Zoho.
I'm really glad to be back, Michael. Thanks for having me back.
Tell us about where you're situated, where you're located right now.
I'm located in a small, tiny village about 400 miles, about 640 kilometers, 650 kilometers outside of Chennai, which is the major metro area, the southern part of India. About the same distance from Bangalore as well. And it's a tiny village and it's a hamlet almost, and that's where I am right now.
As we talk, I definitely want to hear about why you're there, and I think that's central to our conversation. But tell us about Zoho and tell us about your role as CEO of Zoho.
Zoho is what we call the operating system for business. It's a cloud-based suite of applications that provides you everything from, of course, CRM, the front office, back office, collaboration, productivity, mail, chat, and HR, accounting, financials, meeting software. So it's a full suite. We started out primarily in the small business. Now we have moved up to larger enterprises as well in the last 5 years. And it's now about 50 million users registered worldwide and more than 500,000 paying customers, organizations. So that's the snapshot of Zoho and about 9,000 employees.
Your focus at Zoho has shifted over time. Where are you focused right now, primarily?
There's two aspects to it. The product side, we are moving towards a fully integrated suite we call Zoho One, which launched a couple of years ago and it's gaining strength now. And the trend in the cloud is towards consolidation of all these applications towards broader suites. That is happening all over, and we are very much leading that charge now on that. And from the company side, about more than a year ago, actually, I decided that we will shift our focus towards more rural locations in terms of our offices, where our facilities are located. In fact, that happened pre-pandemic. It actually the decision had nothing to do with the pandemic, though the pandemic has just accelerated all those moves. For example, we actually had even our Austin office. We bought a farm and we were going to move a lot of our facilities to the farm. And the same thing with in India, and same thing we are doing in Mexico, and we're doing it in Germany, we're doing it in Japan. Everywhere we were going to essentially do a reverse migration from the major metropolitan areas to smaller towns and even small villages. So that was the plan.
Why? What was the purpose of that?
Actually, there's multiple purposes, and I'll list one by one. And first, I felt that the major urban areas around the world, this is true about San Francisco, it's true about Bangalore, it's true about Chennai, and it's true about Mumbai, all of them, they all have become super expensive, cost of living wise, right? And which means that if you bring a new employee into San Francisco or in Mumbai, you are actually now they are at a serious disadvantage to people who are already there. And if they had not bought any real estate, the new employee would not have bought, they are going to be in trouble for a long time. They cannot afford anything. And this has a meaningful effect on their quality of life, their very perception of their milestones. They cannot form a family easily. All of those issues come up. Once somebody puts down roots in an area, they would want to form families, all of that. The Bay Area is too expensive for most people to do that now. And I felt that this doesn't have to be. Cloud technology already enables us to work from anywhere. Then why do we insist on working in that 1 square mile radius, right? So that was one of the decisions. And from the other side, I noticed pretty much around the world, and this is true in India and this is true in the US, the talent pool we are drawing from smaller towns. We are sucking the talent pool and sending them into the major metro areas, either New York Metro or the San Francisco or LA. So the talent pool could be coming from Kansas or Colorado or wherever, right? And this is, I felt that this type of what I call topsoil erosion, the talent as the topsoil, is not good for culture. It's not good for national well-being, all of that. You need to have balance. You don't want to concentrate talent, wealth, all of that in one place, too few places. So in order to distribute it, you have to distribute the talent itself, which means companies like us have to play a role in where we locate our employees. So that was the second reason. So there was a cost of living, then there's a talent topsoil erosion, preventing that. Those are the two major reasons, really.
Certainly, there are two aspects to what you just described. Number one is simply there's a practical business aspect of talent and talent availability at a reasonable cost for Zoho.
Correct.
And at the same time, clearly there's a social dimension where it appears you're thinking beyond the narrow interests of Zoho.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Both, yeah. So that's correct. And, in this case, the social dimension and the business dimension actually coincide remarkably well. If our employees can afford to live on their income well, then they can also be pillars of their community. Their own needs are taken care of, then naturally there will be more voluntary work. A lot of things will benefit in the broader community. On the other hand, if they are on this treadmill where they are constantly worried about their own future, they cannot really be contributing to their communities. They kind of become more self-centered. They have to be. There's no other way. So in that sense, I felt that just distributing the talent to smaller towns and locating our facilities there automatically causes a lot of other good things to happen. And people will do, for example, we've encouraged people to get into organic or natural farming, and so that they become more rooted in their soil. We have told people to volunteer in their communities, maybe in education, training, skill development, all of that. Because there is, of course, when we go to a place, there's local talent that, if it's some training, could be employees for us. Our own employees could play a vital role in bringing the talent to the surface, exposing the talent. And that actually is not only beneficial to the company, this also benefits the employees who are doing this kind of work because they get a real kick out of it. It's like a psychic energy they get out of this kind of activity, right? It feels good. It really does feel good. So those are the reasons, really.
Sridhar, this approach to both business and broader well-being, broader well-being in a way we could call philanthropy. That's the traditional term. And this is very different from traditional philanthropy because usually what happens is somebody has a certain amount of money, they run their business, they form a foundation, and the foundation writes checks. This is quite a very different approach.
This is a different approach, very different. And I'll explain why I actually don't particularly believe in that model, that just writing checks model. Because it's the problems of places like these are just not merely money. It's about attention. It's about talent retention. It's about people who care about their communities, people who are rooted. In other words, you cannot fix a lot of these problems by just writing checks, however big those checks may be. And I felt that by putting our own facilities, our own employees in these places, we could actually play a vital role. And that's actually why I don't consider this traditional philanthropy at all. And there is a precursor to it. We actually have this thing called Zoho University. Like we now call it Zoho Schools of Learning. And this program has always taken high school graduates and put them through our own training program. And for a year and a half, we actually pay them to attend this. We pay them a stipend. And at the end of this, if they finish it successfully, and they go through a battery of projects and all of that, evaluate them, and almost 95% of them do finish, they get absorbed into the company as employees over time. And that program, we don't actually call it a philanthropy, even though we pay the students, we invest in them, all of that. And the reason for that is, if you look at it over a 5-year period, those employees become very valuable to us in terms of their skills, the extra skills they've gained. They become really major assets to the company. So in effect, there's also an investment going on. But if you look at from that perspective, here's a company that came in and invested in them, and they did not have the skills. So they look at the company as doing some philanthropic or charitable work. But in reality, we are also investing in them because they will actually be really valuable for us in 4 or 5 years. So both are true. Both are true.
You look at both dimensions. You're trying to
Exactly.
integrate this social impact, sustainability approach with the traditional profit-making business.
Correct. And in fact, I don't believe that there should be any separation at all. Because if we conduct our profit-making operations unmindful of the social consequences, and then guilt trip ourselves into writing big checks for the social impact things, that's never going to be good, because our business life and our philanthropic life don't mesh together well. And that duality, that separation itself causes a problem. And I actually don't believe in it. I think it has to be holistically integrated. Your business activity and doing good to society have to go together.
Is there a conflict between these two that you see at all?
At least in my point of view, there is no conflict. Because when you actually conduct your business in a kind of ruthless manner where you don't take care of your communities, all of that, that business does have a built-in expiry date. Maybe employees, maybe the community. There's always a built-in resentment. And I'm a believer in this law of karma, or cause and effect, really. Or really in English, what goes around comes around. If you are not holistically taking care of your employees, your customers, your communities, you're going to reap what you sow. It's going to happen. So it's not even good in a long-term perspective. Long-term meaning here, maybe a 20, 25-year, 30-year perspective. So only in the very short term, say if your perspective is 5 years or 7 years to an exit, maybe you can get away with this behavior. But if you intend to be a long-term corporate citizen, you really have to be a citizen and you have to take part holistically in your community. So there really is no contradiction from where I sit.
I think from the popular perspective, there is a disconnect because we don't see these two parts integrated together.
Right.
And how have you overcome that?
It starts with how we hire people. So we look at hiring differently than most companies do. For example, I always say that we prefer to hire people to whom our existence will make a vital difference in their life. So what I mean by that is, see, many companies chase after that one person or headhunt heavily, where there's one person who has some 7 competing offers. They want to add an 8th competing offer. That's very common, right? Just go talent hunting that way. We actually say that, that's actually detrimental to holistic well-being of everyone, really. Because even the person with 7 offers doesn't really appreciate the 8th offer that much. They don't particularly care. And so instead, why not actually take people to whom your existence makes a difference? And our finding is that there is a lot of talent that does not get an opportunity because people won't take a chance on them. They won't really be willing to take a chance. And business is all about risk taking. Keep in mind that we seem to have forgotten that. Business is all about risk taking. And we have to take a risk on people too, because that's an essential part of our business. And that's what we do, really.
Ragul TG says, moving the workforce from urban centers to rural areas may prevent them from accessing other facilities such as educational institutions for their family and other types of arts, whatever it might be. Basically, the advantages of cultural centers. Yeah. What's your take on that?
I mean, I am in a remote village in India. Even here, there do exist educational facilities within maybe a 5-10 mile radius. And there's even a hospital, a decent one, within about a 15-mile radius. So it's not like it's completely devoid of all those. And there are some cultural and artistic facilities. And actually, the way I say it to our own employees, for example, we have next week a cultural program going on right in this village. We put that together. And the kids here are enacting a kind of a play. So these kinds of things, we can do it. We can bootstrap. We are all, there's artists and there is actors, there's all that musicians inside us, a lot of us, right? So we can do these cultural things ourselves. And it's not necessary that, this again goes to that idea that I'm not a big believer in this mass-consumed culture. Culture has to come from within. And locally what is produced is culture too. And that's the part that I encourage our own employees to put together. And along with the community members.
Are you, through your social impact efforts, imposing your personal views that then have this impact on your employees and also on the surrounding communities?
Absolutely. There's definitely some truth to that, but that's inevitable, right? If you are in a leadership position, your views do end up influencing your organization. That's inevitable for good or bad. I mean, for both good and bad, right? It's never true that you have a really strong leadership and that leadership doesn't end up actually doing something to that organization in terms of their influencing the views. So it's always going on one way or the other, right? So in this case, our employees actually are, they only stay here if they agree broadly with these views, right? Most people that select themselves into, I actually believe in these things, I don't believe in these things. And if they don't believe in these things, they tend to leave early on, and which works out great for them too, right? This is how it should be, really.
No, you make a good point. So there's a certain type of culture and values that exist inside the company, and you want to find people, and people want to work at, hopefully, companies that match their own values.
There could exist a company that believes in the opposite of everything I believe, and that could be very successful. Okay, they just have a very different culture. So this is not to say there's only exactly one way here. That's my way. I'm just saying you got to pick one way and stick to it. And people who like that way come to you. That's how I think about it.
We have a very interesting question from Arsalan Khan on Twitter. And Arsalan is addressing this cultural aspect. He says that it seems that the definition of corporate social responsibility is changing, evolving over time, and now really must involve employees at the individual level to be a part of it. And it seems like that view corresponds precisely with what you're trying to do at Zoho.
That's exactly right, actually. That's why I said it's not just about writing checks. It's also about active participation. In fact, as we open these rural centers, I've told the managers in these rural centers and the employees, I said, I expect each of you over the next 3 to 5 year period to become anchors, pillars of your communities, and someday even perhaps run for local elections, local in your village, in your little town. You have to play an active role in your civic affairs too, while being employees here, right? I expect you to do all these because that's how you actually have a holistic, full dimensional life. And that's going to enrich you. That's going to enrich the company. Your experiences are going to be valuable to us too. So it's not just the corporate responsibility you have here, but it's also a broader community responsibility you have.
We have a comment from LinkedIn. You can tell I really like taking the comments and the questions. Very often they're just great. And Ion R says he is a placement officer from, and I won't even try to pronounce the name, Polytechnic College, Salem, Tamil Nadu, Zoho, and he says Zoho University is doing great work in the Polytechnic in placing outgoing students. He wants to mention that 10 of their students have successfully completed Zoho University training and are currently working at Zoho as software engineers. He says all the selected candidates are from rural backgrounds and have extraordinary talent. And he says, I am so grateful to you, sir.
Thank you. Really appreciate this. This is really, I'm so glad to hear this kind of a report on the ground. I'm so glad because that means whatever we are doing is really working. And I love that.
Sridhar, what are the challenges that one faces, that you faced in the course of adopting, developing, and executing this strategy?
When you are really not successful yet, people would naturally question whether any of these things will actually work, right? That's normal. People should be skeptical. Any new effort is going to find both internal and external skeptics, and even your well-meaning well-wishers, maybe friends and family, could question whether your beliefs could really work, or you're just, believe in your own idealist visions, but without having a concrete reality in it, right? It's always true. So the way I promote those challenges is I say, let's try a small experiment in this area. Let's not do something big, but let's do something small. Let's learn from this. And if the thing doesn't work, I'll admit that it doesn't work. If it works, let's scale it up. And that way, we have always actually, we didn't directly confront the challenge, but we kind of sidestep it by performing small experiments to resolve questions as we go. So that's how I always promoted it.
We have another question from Twitter, and this is from Rex. And Rex says, on the other hand, is what you're describing in terms of employment always a good thing because it's going to depress wages for Americans?
Yeah, but the world is a lot bigger than only America, right? There is going to be there is software market in India, there's software market in Vietnam, there's software market in Japan, all of these countries. And this question itself indicates that somehow there is a zero-sum game where if somebody in India has a job, somebody in America does not have a job. That's not actually how economics works. Though lately, because of central bank depredations, all of that, it appears that way. But they're really, for example, if somebody in India has food, doesn't mean somebody else has to go hungry somewhere else. We can both have food, we can both have jobs. So that's actually how I see the world.
And we have another question from Twitter, and this is from Madan Babu. And he says, what advice do you have for young people who want to create a startup, and also for engineering students who about their future endeavors?
I would say before you do a startup, ask yourself, why do you want to do it? I mean, what is your purpose in it? And if that is that I would want to make a quick money out of it, then think harder, because it's not, the odds are low that you will make that quick money. Odds are low. I mean, you have to accept that the headline success stories you hear are actually a very small minority of startups. Vast majority of startups struggle for a long time. So on the other hand, if you actually want to solve a problem and you have some passion, be prepared for the long haul. Even if you take off in the short run and you achieve grand success, the correct way to bet is that no, that may not happen, and I may have to be stick to this long haul. And that is how I'll advise. So have a long-term dream about this and go about it. Maybe you will achieve short-term success too, but don't count on it. That's how I think.
Let's take another question from Twitter. I always give priority to the questions from Twitter and from LinkedIn. And this is from Viraj Shah. How can we make development more sustainable?
That's a really important question. Actually, I think about it a lot. And my own lifestyle after moving to this village has dramatically changed, where, for example, I don't use air conditioning now, and I'm perfectly comfortable here. It's still a little hot, but nothing that you cannot get used to with a fan. And you can also build buildings so that they naturally cool off. For example, we had traditional techniques we are reviving, where you could cool buildings naturally without using air conditioning. And similarly, I'm actually use bicycles a lot and use cars only on occasion when absolutely needed. So a lot of these things have made changes, and these are easy changes to make personally. But I do believe that each of us have to think about this, because it is extremely important now that the development growth, particularly in the Indian context, the world cannot afford India to become a China or the US in terms of emissions, all of it. But with our population base, if our per capita emissions reaches any American levels or even Chinese levels, the world will be completely fried. So we have to have a sustainable development path around the world. So Americans have to cut down consumption, Chinese have to cut down consumption. This absolutely is the need of the hour.
What I find particularly interesting, Sridhar, about you is you're actually living it. You're not planted. I mean, you've become extremely successful. You're not planted in Silicon Valley. You're in rural India and you've given up air conditioning. And just as one example, I find that very fascinating and unusual.
That actually has a benefit. I used to suffer from asthma, and after cutting air conditioning out, actually now my health is much better. So there is a health reason for me to do it. But it's still, I wanted to give it up because also I felt that this is a more sustainable way. And there are natural ways to cool yourself.
But again, the model that of social impact that you have is so different from the traditional philanthropy-based model
Yeah.
where the benefactor is quite separate from
Yeah.
the recipients. And in your case,
Correct.
there's a mixing of the two.
There is a mixing. That mixing is very common throughout in everything we do in Zoho. I'll give you a different example. I actually don't like that English word professional because to me, the word professional conveys a bundle of skills minus all the human personality, the blood and the emotion of it, right? You have to keep all that out of your job. But yet, I mean, someone like Steve Jobs was full of emotion, right? He would cry in meetings. I mean, how many CEOs would cry in meetings? We had Steve Jobs would cry in meetings. So he had that emotion, he had that passion, he brought to work. And if we cannot separate the two. If we separate that, we will actually produce suboptimal results. So to be an employee who comes in is a holistic, full person. They have their kids, they may have families, they have parents. All of those concerns do also play a role in how the company, how they perform in the company. And we have to take that into account holistically. So that is an example. And that mixing is common in everything we do.
So let me ask you a personal question. I hope you don't mind. How important is money to you personally?
I actually spend very little money on myself. But money is important in the sense that if there is an important cost that I want to support, having money around allows me to spend that. As an example, we started the school here in this village. It's a free school and there is about 75 kids now studying in it. We hired 5 teachers, all of that. I didn't just have to think about it. I just went and spent the money. That's where money is useful. So the way I say it is money is a technology. Money is not a value system. How we use the technology is what matters. And that has to be governed by our value system. And the value system itself has to come prior to money or independent of money. You have to have some values for you to make use of the technology called money.
I'm pausing, just trying to absorb what you just said about money being a technology rather than a value system. Maybe please elaborate on that.
Money is what is the exchange medium and it's a technology. It's like money is like WhatsApp in a way, right? We exchange messages, we exchange money or goods. And this is an old invention. WhatsApp is a new invention, recent invention, but money is a very old invention. So we take it for granted, but it still is an invention. It's an invention, right? It came from somebody's mind as a technology. And that is very useful. I mean, the economy, all our prosperity could not exist without that technology called money. But at the very same time, an obsession for money indicates that it's like obsessing about the iPhone or obsessing about your Tesla car or something. It's a really good technology, but how much do you want to obsess about it, right? And it's useful, certainly very useful, but it still has to there has to be a life beyond it, and then you make use of the technology to enhance that life. Money itself cannot create that life. That's the common misperception, right? People think once I make money, I'll be happy. And most such people never find the happiness because if you're not happy to begin with before you made money, you will not be happy after you made the money.
Well, in all honesty, one of the main reasons that I enjoy talking with you is pretty much everybody says what you just said, but you're actually doing it. And that's unusual. We have another question from LinkedIn, and this is going back to the organizational aspects of what you're doing. And this is from Kashyap Kampela. And he says, Zoho has been quite progressive in terms of not insisting on college degrees while hiring. On the other hand, many companies obviously do still insist on a degree, even for entry-level jobs. And so his question is, how can organizations move from quote, credential signaling to skills-based recruitment. So in other words, what's your advice for other organizations from an HR standpoint? Yeah.
I would recommend start small. Maybe take one division, one department, and move to a parallel hiring system, which does not emphasize credentials just so much, and evaluate your own results. Don't take our word for it. Evaluate yourself whether that works for you, and then you scale up that experiment within your organization. So that is what I would suggest people do. And this way, you keep again the impact of your experimentation small, and you don't have to seek a broad consensus across the organization to completely switch to a new system. And you can take it one step at a time.
To what extent are the lessons at Zoho transferable to other organizations? Zoho is kind of unique because you've been around for a long time. You've been very successful, and you're CEO, and you're a private company, and you own, I don't know how much of the stock, but probably most of the stock. So how transferable are the lessons to other types of organizations?
I recognize that. If public companies that have to report external investors will face other pressures. Absolutely, that's true. So they may not have the freedom we have. And the public company CEO certainly does not have the freedom I have in how I run my business. So that's true. But having said that, we still can incorporate aspects of all these. For example, relaxing the credential requirements in hiring. That's not a very difficult thing to do. And you can conduct these experiments. Similarly, opening smaller rural centers, that's not very difficult to do. Again, you can do these things. And so it's not like you have to be all or nothing. You can do parts of it. You can do parts that work for you. So that's what I would say.
Okay. Oh, and before I forget, subscribe to our newsletter. It's at the top. Click the subscribe button at the top.
Very important.
Very important. Thank you so much, Sridhar. All right. We have a question from Tim Crawford. He is one of the leading influencers of CIOs in the world, and he's been a guest on CXO Talk a couple of times. And Tim says, why do you think more companies don't focus on social responsibility, and what can we do to get more focus, to bring more focus on this topic?
Actually, some of it is just superstition, right? Some of it is the prior belief that social responsibility and business performance don't go together. And that, see, let me tell you where I come from in this. Take this belief in credential, college degree and all of that, grades, all that. By now, there is considerable evidence, data to prove that credential is not all that relevant to the on-the-job performance. And yet, most companies stick to it because it's just that, they've always done it that way. In a similar way, a lot of these things, new ideas, take a while to catch on because a generation of people grew up believing otherwise, and they're not going to change their ways. They don't want to change. They're just too comfortable in a particular way of operating. So that's really the reason. And how do you do this? I would say target the younger generation because they don't have prior baggage, prior belief systems. They may be able to do it faster.
And we have another question from Twitter, and this is from Constance Woodson. And Constance says, is Zoho, quote, a compliance culture?
Not really. Actually, Zoho is a very freewheeling culture inside where we have a lot of, we call town hall or open house. We have where people post anonymous questions of including me, and that can be pretty freewheeling. We are very harshly critical of our own efforts inside. Employees are, and they could offer criticism of me and all of this. So it's a pretty freewheeling culture. But at the same time, people do recognize we have something special in this company and we want to be part of it. So you'll see that underlying current of, hey, we are really proud of being part of this company, but you have to, we have to be even better. So that's often the tone of the discussion.
Any CEO is insulated, potentially at least, from the real concerns that employees have, and even possibly that customers have.
Correct.
So you have the intent, and you say that you have at Zoho a free and open culture. How do you actually know?
Basically, who I talk to, right? And our company actually has very few formal meetings for the organization. A lot of it is informal. And I'll give you an example. Today, an employee visited me, and he has been, maybe 3 years in the company. He just came over to say hello. He lives nearby, and he came over to say hello, and we spent half an hour. And he is not actually in anywhere sort of in my reporting hierarchy. It's like, in team, there may be 3 or 4 levels between him and me. But he just came over to say hello, and we hung out for half an hour, and we talked and all that. Tomorrow, an employee is coming on Saturday. Again, the same way. And she just pinged me on chat and said, "Hey, I'll come over and then let's just talk about stuff." So that type of interaction, and they don't need an appointment. They just ping me on chat and say, "Can I come over and talk?" Sometimes it's a phone call, because they could be remote. So, and then there is this open house anonymous question that give you a flavor. In effect, we are running our own internal glass door, our own glass door inside. So a lot of issues get surfaced. And then you go, and if somebody reports an issue, and then you go around talking to people, within 2 or 3 people, you discover what is going on, really. So there is that informal interaction going on at all levels, all the time. And I myself don't insulate myself behind a lot of corporate will. I actually am accessible to employees. Anybody could chat with me. And I'm also on Twitter. So customers, support tickets, all of that I actually get to see. So if we are screwing up something, odds are I'll know very quickly.
How do you have the time? You're running this major company. How do you have the time to just have an open door policy?
My running the company is that open door policy. There is no other running the company other than that. So that means that I don't actually conduct too many formal meetings. We don't have a lot of these board meetings, the high level meetings, strategy meetings, all of that. A lot of that happen on chat and all of that. But really, this informal interaction is majority of my time, really. So when you said, how do you run the company and do this? Well, I run the company by doing this.
You must have very strong managers who handle the day-to-day operations, because as you said,
exactly, that's critical, absolutely critical. That's what actually is true. In fact, we have about 700 or so managers, and they are, with 9,000 employees, and they are actually the foundation of the company for the company. And without their active involvement, and without their real day-to-day involvement, the company cannot run. And I let them do their work without my undue interference.
When somebody says that to me, I wonder, what would the other folks say? Would they agree that it's hands off? Would they agree?
They would broadly agree, except when I want to get involved sometimes. They'll say, yeah, he'll be hands off until someday when he wants to get involved. But look, I cannot get involved in 200 projects. I get involved in a couple of projects.
We have another question from Josh Welsh. He asks, he would love to hear your favorite story from when you first started Zoho.
My favorite story is we signed a customer up in 1998 or 98, I think, yeah. And it was one of our bigger deals at the time. And I was a salesperson, and a lot of roles on my shoulder, because we were a tiny company. And I finished the contract with this customer. And after the deal is done, and he tells me, I'll give you one advice. You are a lousy salesman. This deal would have been worth 10 times to you if you had a proper salesman. You don't know how to sell your software. So one of the first things you should do, go hire a proper salesman. That's what he told me, because he said, I got a great deal, but you're an idiot. So go find yourself a good salesman. You can make 10 times the money on this software. So I did hire a salesman. That's one of my favorite stories.
It seems to have worked out.
Yeah, I did.
Can you provide a few examples of how Zoho is doing sustainable development?
Sustainable has multiple dimensions. There's, of course, the green dimension, the environmental dimension, where, for example, all our data centers now we are installing renewable energy, solar, all of that to not depend on the fossil fuel energy. That's one example. Our offices, all of that mostly run on renewable energy, solar, and in Indian context, even solar and wind now, more and more, so both. And the second dimension is sustainable from a human dimension, where, for example, I mentioned that preventing the topsoil erosion. And in fact, this actually goes to even it addresses the green concern. I'll explain. When you move a person from a small town or a rural person to a city, the energy consumption actually goes up because they will live in a suburb and they commute, all of that. While their commute could be like a 5 minute bicycle ride, now it could be a car or a bus or train or whatever. So infrastructure is needed, all of that. So there is that. The second is the urban areas are also ego or prestige traps. It very much matters what my neighbor wants so that I can do better. While in rural areas, you don't have as many prestige traps for you. So your consumption naturally goes down. Automatically, you consume less. And then I've seen it in myself. I simply just don't have a desire to buy a lot of stuff. And I always had less desire than, but now I have even less after moving to a rural area. So that is sustainable too. So these are all actually factors that play into this.
To what extent is Zoho a reflection of you as an individual, as a person?
There is a lot of my personal, the way I conduct my life, my value systems, because actually we are blessed with employees who really love and respect me. So quite a lot of them try to practice, some of these ideas that I've mentioned. For example, I tell them, you are never going to achieve happiness by being in your ego trap, prestige trap, where you're competing with your neighbor or this or that. You're never going to be happy because there's always going to be somewhere. Maybe their kids study better, their kids go to better schools or better colleges or whatever. Somewhere you're going to come short and you're going to feel bad about it. So quit competing, quit being in the rat race. So those are the kinds of ideas that people do follow. So there is a lot of that, the philosophical element that animates the company.
And we have another question from Twitter, and this is from Arsalan Khan again. Companies find it hard to measure and manage intangibles. Any tips or advice for other companies? I think this relates directly to the culture.
Try not to measure intangibles. that's the first advice I give, because there's a very reason it's intangible, because it's not measurable. And you're trying to come up with all this fool that intangible by coming up with tricks. Well, people game metrics all the time. Okay, so you are going to have a situation where the very metrics you set up get gamed and you get counterproductive results. So, and how do you manage it? Well, you have to actually create a system of trust, a system of respect, a system where people do take care of things like this without actually somebody watching over their shoulder all the time. And if you don't have that trust and you substitute it with this measurement systems, metric systems, you're going to create unhappiness in employees and stress in managers. And both are bad. Actually. So that's why I think there's no substitute for trust, building trust.
Again, I'm pausing here because I recognize the difficulty in doing that, in cultivating that level of trust, and then to run a business the size of yours without specific metrics in place that cover these dimensions seems very, again, unusual to me.
We do have metrics like revenue and profitability and all of those, productivity, all of those, the things that we can track, we do track. And our software, of course, is highly tracked, meaning the sense that we measure everything about the performance and all of that. So we actually do use metrics where it makes sense. Where we don't use metrics is when it comes to this human performance, what makes people tick. Those kinds of things, metrics are not useful at all.
When we were talking earlier, you made a comment to me and you said, I'm a business person. I'm not a monk.
Oftentimes people assume, and this is the reason I say it is, you want to see that the way we operate is not some outlandish, otherworldly, monkish experiment. I'm very much a businessman, and I still very much, our business actually is growing, it makes profit, we take care of our employees and our customers, all of that well. We are very much in that sense a business. And my point is, you don't have to be a monk, you don't have to withdraw from the world in order to do good, in order to be, I do want to sort of avoid this whole, hey, somebody is saintly so they can do this, but not for me. That is actually not that's the reason why I said I'm not a monk. I'm a regular person. And I can get angry sometimes, and I have my flaws too. So that's why I think it is important that we actually, all of us can try to be better selves. And our business will be better because of that.
Sridhar, as we finish up, what have you learned that's applicable to other organizations that other people can take away from this approach to business that you've executed with Zoho?
I've been at this 25 years now. Okay, it's a fairly long inning already, and I'm still, the universe willing, health willing, all of that. I still hope to go on another maybe 25, 30 years, however many years. I'm granted. So, and normally, a lot of people in business will tell you the stress is killing me, or I'm burnt out, and I want to quit. And a lot of people say this. I've actually met founders who have sold their companies, and they say, I'm completely burnt out. I just cannot think of anything else right now. And why does it happen? And they ask me, how are you doing this for 25 years and keep on going? That's actually the benefit of our approach, where it's really when you create happy employees, happy customers, my job is less stressful than it otherwise would be. So it might have been a slower pace, but it's much more durable. And so I can keep going. I don't have stress that many business people are afflicted with. So that is actually very important. And the most important thing to me of all of this is that I can be at peace with myself.
And what advice do you have to business people listening to this who say, I really like the social benefit. I think that's great. At the same time, I don't want to adopt his philosophy. I like material things. I want more material things. I have no intention of changing, but how in my company can I adopt a more expansive, socially inclusive view?
Material things are good. I mean, going in a private jet or a luxury car is better than the other experiences, right? Obviously, that's why people like them. So it's objectively it's better, right? A nice car is better than a lousy car. So, but the point I'm making is the key to happiness is not just how many such goods we accumulate, right? There is a point at which people get satiated, right? You're not excited by that new car or a new jet after maybe 3 months. It's still actually this is really true. People have found this to be true. On the other hand, when you actually, and this is seriously true for me, when I go spend time with the kids, and these are very poor kids from a very humble background, and I spend time with them, there's something mysterious that goes on that makes me happier as a person. And I translate that happiness into work. So being happy, I'm actually treating our employees better because I'm happier. So and our customers get a better software. So that means actually it benefits our business too in a way. So it is actually that. So all I ask is find out what really makes you happy and do it. And often you will find that what really makes you happy is not a more luxurious car or a bigger house or whatever, but it's also being of service to others, being useful to others. And that's what most experiments have found.
How has the pandemic affected Zoho?
Initially, the first month, maybe March, we had a little bit of impact we saw. After that, it was surprisingly little impact, and our business has done reasonably nicely. And I say this with some concern because I tell you why. The world has split into two groups now. Those of us who work online, and I call us maybe the Zoom tribe, if you want to put a name, right? And then those are people who work in the physical world. And the income distribution now is such that most of the Zoom tribe has suffered zero income erosion. Maybe even seen income growth, actually. While the people who work in whether logistics or restaurants or movie theaters and all of that often have seen a dramatic drop in income, right? And those people already were making less money to begin with. And now they've seen a serious erosion in income. So this has had the effect of the pandemic, has had the effect of worsening the already existing inequalities in society, which were already bad to begin with. That was one of the burning political questions across the world, not just the United States, is inequality, rising inequality. And the pandemic has made that worse. And this is one thing that it's not sustainable. We definitely have to fix this problem because the world cannot go on like this. So that is my real concern. But our business has done well. So the post-pandemic world has to be a more just one. for all of us to be safe in it.
Sridhar, any final thoughts as we close up right now?
I would exhort people to explore this type of life, a rural life, because a lot of people may actually like it. I mean, the open space. In fact, to be honest, I don't feel like I'm making any sacrifice. I'm gaining a lot of things, fresh air and a nice natural environment, and surrounded by a lot of animals, all of that. So it's actually a lot of things I love about this. And so it's not just I made some sacrifice to be here. So I would urge a lot of other people to explore this possibility.
Well, this has been a very inspiring conversation for me, and according to several people in the commenters on Twitter and LinkedIn who said the same thing. We've been speaking with Sridhar Vembu. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Zoho. Sridhar, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you for watching. Before you go, please subscribe on YouTube and hit the subscribe button at the top of our
Very
website.
important.
Very important. Exactly. There you go. Everybody check out cxotalk.com and we'll see you again soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.